Thank you for having me, by the way. I mean, you can't see how nice this house is, but this is a real fuck you kind of house. This is a serious house.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Lumos Talks. I'm Bogdan. I'm CEO and co-founder of Blind Spot, and we're doing the Lumos House together with Andrew Young. And because we have a bunch of interesting people coming up to our events, we decided to show up with some cameras and stuff, and basically sit down for a talk and share interesting stories with the world. And with people that want to know what it takes to build companies, to build stuff, basically anything, and how was the journey there? Because it's not all fun and games and what news articles make it to be. So today we have Razvan, who is Blind Spot and a bunch of other stuff. And of course we have Seb Webber.
Hello.
Hi, Seb. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. It's so
Nice
good to see you.
again.
You guys go way back.
We do.
Yeah.
10 years, maybe?
I think so.
About 10 years,
or
yeah.
something like this. So Seb is one of the most creative people I know, actually. Really.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we know each other for 10 years.
Yeah.
We did some projects together.
We did.
And Seb has some interesting stories regarding his, I don't know, creative work. And if you want to share them with us, it'll be perfect.
Let's start with the beginning. How, I mean, you have a super cool intro into the entertainment and music world. So how did that happen?
So thank you for having me, by the way. I mean, you can't see how nice this house is, but this is a real fuck you kind of house. This is a serious house. I started DJing when I was 16 in London. I grew up in London, and I would throw these parties that would have like indie bands on until like 10 o'clock, and then we'd play house music till 2. Which sounds really not revolutionary, but I think the timing was right. This was probably 2004 in London, 2004-ish, and 2003. And we would put on these events, and me and my buddies, and I would DJ, and we were just doing it to make a couple bucks. But they became the place where like we would book. This was like in the era of early MySpace too, maybe a little bit before MySpace, but you know, we were finding bands online and music online, and so it was called Phono for one night only, which ironically ran for 3 years, but we were just going to do it once, and we would put on these bands and DJ and the you know the I didn't know at the time, but like the record label-y people would come to them, you know, because we would have all these new bands, and we lost a ton of money, and no one, you know, it was just like, it was a fucking nightmare from beginning to end, but it was like, it was cool, right? So we had, and we were, you know, people could come and watch these bands to like 10, 11 o'clock, and then they could just dance like it was a regular club. And I think that I remember at that time, like, if you like trance, you could only go to a trance club. If you like drum and bass, you could only go to Fabric on Fridays. House was kind of like in a downward thing, but so like we just played like electronic music, and we'd go across genres, and we would just, it was like and it was like £8 to get in. Like, it wasn't a lot of money, you know. We weren't, you know, and we did it at this famous venue in London called Plastic People, and the ceilings was like this high above your head, and at the end of the night you'd see like sweat dripping from the ceilings. But like, we had like Errol Alkin come DJ, Pete Tong, and it became like the place where people wanted. And we had like, we put the Klaxons on first, put the Kills on, like put these bands on, and then from that I ended up getting an internship at a record label, which was XL Recordings, which is probably the biggest independent label in the world at this point. And so I just started in the mailroom and was throwing these parties and you know, I was in the scene, so to speak, and I became a project manager, and that was my first real job. I was like a creative project manager. And then I became an A&R guy, and I worked on the teams that had some pretty successful artists on it. And from there, you know, it kind of took off, and I'm probably 21, 22 at this point. And yeah, I was working with some really great artists, like really great, like really original artists. Yeah.
Is this the time with Radiohead and Adele?
Yes.
And that's insane.
At like 22 or 21, I was working with, Jack White, White Stripes, Raconteurs, Peaches, Adele, MIA, Radiohead, Tom York, Basement Jaxx, Peaches,
fucking nuts.
the XX. And I was like just across all the projects. It was great. You know, I wasn't paid much money at all, but I was able to dip into all these projects, and it was fucking amazing.
How does a 22-year-old feel when he's working basically with the biggest artists in the world?
I guess at that point, the only big artist at the beginning was like Basement Jaxx. Oh, The Prodigy. So ironically, The Prodigy is my favorite band in the world. And that's why I went to XL. And I actually got to, if you look at the greatest hits of The Prodigy, it's my handwriting all over the album cover. And I thought that was I think I did that at like 9, and I thought that was it. I thought I'd arrived. You know, I was able to like be part of the artwork of The Prodigy. And but I think, yeah, Jack was big when I joined, and Basement Jaxx was big, White Stripes, Raconteurs, but like Adele, MIA hadn't really happened yet. So I was able to see that from inception, which was really magical. And I mean, it was interesting because I kind of thought that was normal. And I'd come, you know, in my early 20s, I was flying to the Grammys and, you know, doing all that stuff. And I just thought, oh, this is what it's like to be in the record business. Little did I know, I actually kind of was fortunate enough to have almost the career of a 50-year-old. You know what I mean? And I'm just this young kid. And people fucking hated me.
Just because you were that young,
fucking
right?
Loads. Like I would go into these meetings at Interscope at like, because we would the way XL was changed a little bit now, but they would sign the artist for the world, and they would license to like Interscope in America or Columbia Records or the bigger ones, right? So you'd go into these meetings and everyone would be like, who's this fucking punk ass kid? I remember meeting Jimmy Iovine when I was like 22, and it was just like, of course I knew who Jimmy Iovine was. I was like, oh my God, I'm in Jimmy Iovine's house. Holy shit. And, you know, I faked it till I made it, just like everybody else. I pretended I knew what I was talking about.
So back then there was no Instagram and crap like that. But
No.
what was your friend circle? What was your view in the people that knew you, in your peers in your same age group?
I didn't really have any friends because I worked so hard. Because at 19, I started a ticketing company called at the same time as working at XL, called CrowdSurge, that became Songkick. So we're raising money, and I ended up cashing out when I was 24, but I just worked. Like I used to, if I was awake, I was working. So I just, which I don't really care that much to do that kind of stuff anymore, but I just was first one in, last one out. And I would just say yes to stuff. Yes. Yes. You need to go, once I got flown on a plane to give MIA a Christmas card on December 24th, right before Christmas. I just said yes. I just would go, and I was just hungry and just,
But how you managed to do the CrowdSurge and working like crazy?
Well, they paid me shit at XL, so I'm like, well, you're paying me shit. I can't, I'm going to do something else. And I honestly didn't really make money until I sold it. But I'm pretty good at, I never do one thing. Like I can't. My brain doesn't work like that. You know, when I was at Red Light, I was like, when I was transitioning out of Red Light, I was at Red Light. I was managing 10 artists at Red Light. I was the global marketing director of Coldplay, and I was the creative director at Tidal for like a 6-month period.
Yeah.
But that came with its downfalls too. There, you know, it wasn't good. But
Did you have a burnout moment? I mean, those are basically jobs for teams, right? You were the creative director of Tidal. You marketing manager of Coldplay. You're managing 10 artists. It's
that, you know what? When I got told that I could fire all those artists, I was so fucking happy, dude. Those are the greatest 10 phone calls I ever made. See, I'm leaving, you know, management sucks. It's the hardest job in the business. But I learned more in the 5 years of being a manager than I did everything else, because you touch everything. So you know how tour production works. You know how album art works. You know how executive producing media video works. You know how to hire a director. You know how to hire artwork. You know how to do the A&R. You know how to master. You know how to tour. You know how to make t-shirts. Like, so you touch every area of it. But I'm also very good at delegating. Like I think just a skill I had where like I know what my limitations are.
We had exactly this discussion.
Yeah. And we've done, that's
morning.
actually kind of how we started working together, was I gave you my overflow because I'm like, I can't do this. Exactly. And so I'm good at picking the right people to work on stuff. I think that's kind of my secret sauce.
how was you were with Tidal for 6 months?
And I was with Tidal for 2 years.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
How was that? And I have a second question about Tidal.
What happened to it?
What happened to it?
Look, I think that people. So funny. So I'll tell you the story that no one really knows. So
we get some exclusive.
It's exclusive, right?
Yeah.
So I was at Red Light, and I kept getting this call from a number I didn't know.
Red Light Management.
Yeah. So I'm sitting at my desk working with Marcus and Ferry and all these people, right? And I'm getting this call from this number, and I don't pick it up. And eventually I pick it up. It's calling me in a row. And a guy comes and goes, "Hey, it's Jay. I got your number from Dave." And I'm like, "No, it's not Jay." I hang up on him.
No way. No way.
Swear to God. And I call him back, and he says, and he has my buddy Dave on the line at this point, and says, "Hey, we're doing this thing. It's because Tidal, they actually bought it. It was a company out of Norway. It already had 500,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
So they purchased it. We'll talk about the math in a minute, because it actually was really successful. But anyway, so I'm secretly working for Tidal because I can't tell anyone, and I'm at Red Light. And so it was what happened was, do you remember when they did that press event that was disastrous?
Yeah.
Right. So that morning, I put my official resignation in to Red Light, right? And I get on a plane to New York, and I get food poisoning. And I get to the Trump Hotel where I'm staying. I don't know why I was staying there, right? And I am shitting my brains out, puking up, like I'm sick. I was supposed to be at that event. And I'm watching it live, and I'm fucking screaming at my laptop. I'm like, the optics on this are fucking terrible. To be fair, from what I understand, it was set up by a PR company. It actually didn't really have any of the key people at Tidal's. You know, Jay's people are amazing. Everyone, his manager's amazing. Like, they're all really smart. I think what they did is they just gave it to this PR company or whatever it was, and it lacked authenticity, right? Even though it was the most authentic, exciting, and I was fucking super hyped to be part of it. And my job was really simple. It was like, hey, we bought this Norwegian company. We need to change the content to make it more for our new demographic that's going to come with this wave. I remember everyone turned their profile things to blue, all these artists, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, what's going on? What's going on?" That was the only good bit of the launch. But it was it was great. He and his team were the greatest team I think I've ever worked with. I got a lot of leeway. I got to do a lot of really exciting stuff. And I don't know if this was public or not, but like he gave each one of those artists a percentage. So they all made money. They all made money. right?
That's
And, you know, the thing that really made me interested is he bought that company with his own money. He didn't use bank money. He didn't use PE money,
okay.
right? He spent his own fucking money. And I think that's like a big Elon Musk thing, right? Which is like, you know, you get to a level like them, he can raise money, but he put his own money in because he saw it. And that's what was really interesting. That was the decision. Obviously, I was kind of sold already because if Jay calls you, you fucking pick up, right?
Or
but,
not.
Right,
In
or
your
not,
case.
or not. But, you know, and he's a genius, you know, and then he bought that for X amount. I think he bought it for like 54 million and he sold it for 600 million a year and a half later.
Yeah.
Like, and yes, it may not have made the impact that it wanted to, but he made a gang of money, like a gang, for not really a lot of work. Really.
Yeah, I think the overall view that Tidal was not that successful, even though, like you said, they actually made a shit ton of money, is from my point of view, the fact that they had all this, like the top artists, right, that were Tidal.
Yeah.
And Jay-Z and Beyonce were Tidal only, if I remember correctly.
They were for a minute, and then they put the catalog obviously back onto. Yeah, and they released, like, you remember Life of Pablo came out first on Tidal, Lemonade came out first on Tidal, 444 came out, and the other artists all kind of gave some exclusives. And in theory, it should have worked really well. I think the problems that it didn't work was the fact it was $20 a month and not 10. Yeah. And the reason for that has got nothing to do with them and their greed. It's to do with the record labels' contracts with the artists that define how much they stream for. So if you stream in high fidelity, which it was streaming in high fidelity, the actual person that dictates that was not Tidal. It was Universal Music Group, Sony. So that's why it was $20. And I think they just lost a lot of people with the price point, you know, when Spotify is $10 and Apple Music launched at the same time and they did 3 months for free.
Yeah.
Right. And then I think it was $10.99 a month or whatever. And, yeah, but people did not like that price point, but it's fucking not their fault. And I don't care what anyone says. The music quality was the best out of every streaming platform. It sounded the best, even on shitty headphones.
Yeah, that's true. So what happened next after Tidal?
So I worked on and off with Coldplay for a little bit, I think, during that period. And then I had a daughter in 2016. So, and they wanted me to move to New York, and I wasn't going to move to New York, so that's why we parted ways. And I was also going through some shit at the time, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do in life, and so after then, what happened then? I worked with Coldplay for a bit, and then I went to go be an executive producer at my friend's production company because I wanted to, so when I was at Tidal, the greatest thing I learned was I got to run a lot of productions. I got to come up with these ideas of like micro content, like, I don't know, Beyonce and Kanye play Connect 4, like kind of like that. Remember when branded content was like a really big thing? It was like short, sweet shit. And I just loved doing that. I loved setting up the shoots. And my buddy set up a really successful production company. He was like, hey, come work for me for a little bit, see if you like it. And I wanted to learn some new skills, kind of, and I wanted to work with brands over musicians because musicians are difficult.
I remember you made that switch back then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I got to still make. I made a lot of music videos. I did all of Muse's music videos. I produced some Kevin Gates videos, Bad Bunny, J Balvin. Like I got to do some great music, but I was really interested in the other stuff, the branded content. We came up with a show for Apple Music that they still use to this day, like, and it was cool. But I just wanted to be like, you know, more of a producer for a little bit, and I had a lot of fun doing that.
What about Apple? I know that you had some projects with them also.
Yeah, I've consulted for Apple on and off for the last 4 years. Yeah, just helping them with various projects, 2 documentaries. Oh, nice. Yeah, and like this, and I think it's called the Beats One chart takeover, which was our kind of concept. So we ran
Zane Lowe, right?
Yes, but I've known Zane since London.
Yeah, I know.
I used to be Zane. I used to be Zane's opening DJ. So
that's incredible.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
That's mad.
That's, I mean, that's a journey. That's that life story should be in a book because it's crazy.
Oh yeah,
But
it's not even the crazy shit.
yeah, that's actually where I want to go now. So you have this successful podcast where you talk a lot about addiction and how you did it.
So surprise, I had some demons. No, I started using a lot of cocaine, and hookers was my. I don't know if your audience wants to hear this, but I'll talk about it. I would numb myself. I would, when you have that amount of work doing, and I had real false identity of grandeur. I thought I was better than everybody. My ego was somewhat out of control, and it just kind of goes with the territory. And you medicate yourself. I would be in these nightclubs or at these shows and then have to be back at my desk in the morning. And cocaine was a really fucking great tool to help you get through that. And to me, it just kind of got a little bit out of control. It's one of those things, you have lines in the sand and you start passing these lines. And I started trying to get sober, and I would get maybe 3 months, 4 months, relapse, get a month, relapse. And this is all me. I mean, some people in the industry know. I mean, I couldn't give. I think the point is now I'm so comfortable with myself, and I've never really been so truly comfortable with myself, or I couldn't give a fuck. Actually, the first time I went to rehab was in 2015, and Jay kept paying me when I was in rehab. Wow. And actually, out of everyone I fucking worked with who knew that I needed to go away, go somewhere in the desert for 30, 60, 90 days. Him and his team and his manager, Desiree, were the most supportive I think I've ever had. I'm assuming because they come from the streets, so to speak, so they get it and they see it a lot. And I'm sure in a company the size that he has, I'm not unique. You know what I mean? I'm sure, and especially entertainment, you see a lot of people, managers, promoters, agents, creative people, sometimes they get into some weird shit, and so for me now, really my primary purpose is really recovery. I kind of focus a lot on that now, and I'm really into helping people get clean. And I'm not like anti-drugs or anti-alcohol. For most people, they serve a really great purpose, and they fucking work. Right? There's just a small percentage of us that once we get on that hamster wheel, we can't get off.
I mean, they also create a false sense of control because
totally.
I think it depends on intensity and controlling your emotion, not to cross certain lines in the sand. But I never met anybody that can fully control.
Yeah, I've never
either
either.
Alcohol, all drugs, or it's like a poison fruit. You're technically lying to yourself that I can do this, but at some point, everything collapses.
And especially when everything's good, right? And so you're like, I have all this shit. I have this fucking Porsche, and I have this fucking house, and I have this shit. I can't be a drug addict, because you think of a drug addict, one of the dudes on the street, right? And the reality is that alcoholism and drug addiction doesn't discriminate. And I've met Supreme Court judges that have this,
Plus, you're not actually aware of the fact that you're an addict. You feel
there are moments where I could tell you of a couple funny instances where I learned that I was different from people. I think the first time was when I sneezed in the shower and the middle of my nose fell out, and I was like, oh shit, I guess I should pick up the flesh from the bathtub. And then I think I tell the story a lot because it's a really good analogy. So it was Christmas, I don't know, 2014 maybe, about that time, right? It's Christmas Day, and my friends are hosting this Christmas party in the hills, okay? And they say, bring dessert. And I'm like, oh, bring dessert? So I go and get fucking 3 8-balls of fucking Coke, some Molly, whatever. And I show up to this fucking Christmas dinner, and they're expecting me to roll in with an apple pie. and they've got guests. And I'm like, no, I got a ton of fucking drugs on me. So that was the first sign. Here's when it gets crazy, right? All right. So that same couple friend of mine, they invited me over for Easter. Okay. 4 months later, Easter. And I come to the house. I've learnt my lesson. I bring something, you know, for the table, right? And they go to me, hey, we've still got some of that blow you brought on Christmas. It's in the closet on a mirror with a bowl over it. And I remember going, how the fuck have you kept the blow in the closet for 4 fucking months and not touched it? And that was like the first wake-up call for me. I was like, I'm the type of addict where if I start blowing lines, I'm licking the bag and I'm calling the dealer to come back. And I remember being like, oh, okay, this is one of those lines. This is one of those like reflective moments where you're like, how I'm not like somebody else. And I don't drink alcohol either. I haven't drunk alcohol. So I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm not an alcoholic, you know, I'm not drinking booze. And yeah, you cross these fucking lines. And I remember being like, I was genuinely fathomed. Like I could not understand how the fuck they kept this blow in their closet for 4 months, you know? And so that was like the wake up sign. And that was, okay, maybe I fucking have this thing, you know?
Did you give up alcohol and drugs at the same time?
So
how did it
So I
work?
don't drink. I've never been a fan of alcohol because why go to 4 when you can go to fucking 12, you know? So I class myself as an alcoholic because it's a little softer than saying I'm a crackhead. But the reality is I don't take anything that affects me from the head up. You know, that's kind of how I live my life. So I don't, let's say if I get medication, right? Let's say I get a pain pill, I would give those pills to somebody else to hold. Even though I've never abused a pain pill in my life, I just don't, like I'll have them drive over and give me a pill when I need it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because left to my own devices, 1 pill sounds great, but 3 pills, that sounds great. Actually, you know what? 6 pills sounds way fucking better. And I think that's just kind of how my brain works. I have a disease of more. Okay? Yeah. Whatever you have, I want more of it.
So, but how did you beat it? How did I
get rid of it?
Yeah.
So I entered into my 3rd treatment center a year and a half ago. And I help a lot of guys now. And my biggest thing I hope for people wanting to make that change in their life is I hope you're whooped. Like, I hope you're fucked. Like, I hope, you know, people aren't picking up your calls, you know? I didn't have to lose everything, but I know people that have lost everything. But I had to lose a lot. I had to lose relationships with my kid's mom. I had to do a lot of things that, you know, they say the cure to addiction is connection and sobriety, right? And I actually think the cure to addiction is pain. I think if you do it for long enough and you get put in enough pain, at some point you just go, I'll be willing to do whatever. So how I did it was really simple. I checked myself in somewhere and I said, whatever these people tell me to do, whatever, like, you have to realize that your ideas fucking suck. Like, my first idea on everything in my life is usually wrong. I truly believe that. Like, my first thought, my first reaction, my kid's mum says something to me on text I don't like. I'm like, fuck you, bitch. But like, you know, or something that doesn't align with who I am. So I checked myself into somewhere and I just made the thing to say, I don't know shit. The first thing you have to do is realize that you don't know shit and your own thinking has got you to this point. So I just surround myself with people who fix themselves, and I did whatever they did. And if they told me to call them at 7 a.m. every day, I would call them at 7 a.m. If they told me to fucking scrub the floor with a fucking toothbrush, I would scrub the floor. If they tell me to pick up some new guys from a sober living that need to go to an AA meeting, I'll go pick them up. And I just did that for long enough. And I put my career on hold. I couldn't give a fuck. Like I was at that point where like, I'm going to die, right? I mean, I'm going to die or I'm going to end up in jail, right? And I had a friend of mine die. I've had a fucking bunch of friends die, but even that doesn't scare you. Like when you're in it, you know, you always think it won't happen to you, right? And especially now with there being fentanyl and coke, you know, it's not a fucking game anymore, right? And so I was just willing to go, I don't know shit, dude. And like, I was working with, you know, still a creative director, and I called all the managers I had 3 big DJs I was working with, and I just told them what was up. And I didn't give a fuck about the consequences. I didn't give a fuck about losing the gig. I was like, I need to fix this. Whatever this is has to stop. And to be honest, from a creative perspective, like I was fucking terrified because I thought that the coke was part of my identity. I thought it was kind of like a secret weapon, right? And I would outwork you. I would be there earlier than you, and I'd stay fucking later than you with the handy help of Colombia's finest. But I had to get to the point where I didn't give a fuck. I had to really want to live. And and I had to be beaten down enough to where like none of the outside shit mattered. Like I couldn't have given a fuck about work. You could have told me I had the hottest project in the world right then, and I would have been like, I need to get sober. And that was the thing that got me sober, was because always when I tried to do it before, you know, I'm in rehab in 2015. I'm working for Jay-Z. Jay-Z's still paying me, by the way. Like I left rehab with like $100,000 in the bank. Like that's not a fucking good way to leave rehab. Right? And so when I was doing it before, I cared so much about what people thought that I had to get to the point of like, I don't give a fuck. And it took a long time because the facade had to be broken and people had to see the real me, and take it or leave it. It's who I am.
I mean, you know, beating drugs or alcohol from that point, any addiction is, I smoke cigarettes. Sometimes I drink too much. I know how it is. I know how it is to be addicted to something, right?
Yeah.
Especially with cigarettes for me. But I think, is there a moment in time right now, looking back at it, when you think this is what triggered it and this is when it all started? And do you regret the part of your life that it was part of you? And
That's a fucking loaded question. So they say a lot of it stems from childhood. I don't know if that's accurate for me. I don't really remember being miserable as a kid. I don't. I think what happened was, if you give most 20-year-olds a $400,000 a year salary and they sell their company for $30 million and they're living in LA by themselves, chances are, you know, I think I was given, I think I became an older adult way too quick. I think that's really what happened. And also being in the entertainment business, you have to bullshit to get by. The whole business is bullshit. You know, and I would find the thing I hated about management, I can tell you what I hated about management the most, was the lying. So if you're a manager, all you do is you sit at your desk all day and you lie. And they might not look like grandiose lies, but let's say your agent calls you, or a promoter calls you and goes, I want to book your artist here. Well, if your artist sold out 400 tickets, will you say, oh, we just did 700 tickets. Oh, how many t-shirts did you sell last night? Because you're trying to get the next deal. Oh, what, you sold 3,000. You say, oh, we did $7,000. You're always upselling, right? And I hated that. And I hated the upselling of like, and I just choose not to live like that anymore, because like, for me to do that sort of behavior, and also like I'm more creative now than I was before. Like I've definitely like leaned into more being the creative guy and not like the top of the pyramid guy. And also the other big thing is I had to learn The biggest thing I had to learn how to be a worker amongst workers, because I had this like prestigious fucking career in my 20s, and I would, whether people loved me or hated me, 9 times out of 10, I was the fucking second most powerful person in the room. So like, that's not a good recipe for someone who's got what I've got. And so I learned to just be a worker among workers. I learned to just remove my ego. I still do a lot of work today to remove my ego. And I always try to come at things like a place of service. So when I'm working with creative clients, I don't position it with things like, I don't think of it as like, what am I going to get out of it? I had to change my thinking to go and work with these clients and be like, what can I do for you? And if I do well in the end, fucking great. But instead of being like, all right, what's my take? What's my percentage? What's my markup? Can we get overages on this? Oh, we can? All right, yeah, let's build them $2,500 extra. And I'm thinking about the new Jordans I want to buy or the new watch I want to buy. I just don't operate like that anymore because it's so easy to do, especially in the creative world. If you're the guy creating all the creative budgets or you're managing them all, you know? And so even if I'm working with a brand or doing an advertisement, I just try and come to a point of like, all right, what am I here to do? How can I help these people? And for me, that's kind of changed the way I operate.
So what I take from it is basically you took out the toxic and negative of your life and you embraced it in towards the positive, right? Helping people instead of taking their money or...
Well, I think there's always... I don't think I was necessarily like a bad person.
No.
But no.
You were saying that
but I think I just changed the direction. Yeah.
Right.
I would change the direction of how I look at things. And I just try not to look at things of like, what can I get? And like, but instead of what can I do? And the reality is sure, I'm not as rich as I was in my mid-20s and I don't fucking work with Jay-Z anymore and I'm not flying on private jets to fucking Oslo every Tuesday. But I couldn't give a fuck about that shit anymore. And I think the thing, if I look back at if I look at like all the life lessons, the thing I'm most thankful for, the lesson was I'm so grateful I got to learn that when I was in my 20s and early 30s, that all the shit doesn't mean anything. Like the day I got a fucking Ferrari, that night I was looking at like, what Submariner should I buy? Like I'm looking at like, you know, that constant desire for more. Or, you know, I get a piece of art and I think that's going to fix me. I'm always like, oh, that, you know, that, then my life will be fucking perfect, you know? And then you get it and then you have to, and I know that's like an easy thing for somebody who's had resources to say, but until you've had it and you realize that after you get it and you hang it on your wall, it doesn't mean fucking shit. You know, the greatest artwork I own is the shit my daughter makes me. Like that's the shit I would save in a fire in a heartbeat. Like over the Damien Hirst and the Banksys, that shit can burn. And I think I just had to just learn. And I'm grateful because most people, especially in the creative industry, they work their asses off to maybe become the creative director of Adidas or like maybe I'll be the creative art director of Nike when I'm 55. And like, I'm grateful that when they get that and then they get that big check and they're making $400,000 a year and they're traveling first class everywhere and then it fucking hits them that none of that means anything. I'm glad I learned that at 32 and not 56. You know what I mean?
That's amazing. And you talk to a lot of people that have been through the same journey.
So getting sober, it used to be like a taboo thing, and you don't really talk about Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. And now with podcasting and people that led the way like Russell Brand and Theo Von and people that are just very open about it, the stigma's changed. And so honestly, the smartest people I know are drug addicts. I mean, people that run Fortune 500 companies, they're like the biggest fucking attorney in Beverly Hills or whatever it is. It affects everyone. And what I love about it is I go to, it's called my home group, right? It's a meeting I go to every Wednesday night. And I can tell you, I can't tell you who's in there, but I can tell you that Hollywood's top people, music industry top people, whatever it is, all that stuff. And a really smart group of dudes. If any one of them was to work out how they could get high without there being repercussions anymore, one of us would have figured it out. literally. And so, and you can't. And so I just I live today with a set of principles. You might have heard of 12 steps. I live by the 12 steps. And it's a way of life that you have to change, and it's not fucking easy all the time. And of course I want to check out sometimes. Like the reality was I would use drugs to numb myself, usually because of fear. I was scared that the client would like see through me, or you'd see what a piece of shit I was, or weird sexual behaviors that would like happen. And you just got to get to a point where like I don't give a fuck. Like, yeah.
I'm assuming it also changed your relationship with your daughter.
Yeah. So I never not showed up, but I was there, but not really there. Like I was never high around my kid, but like, the real darkness in this is like, the darkness isn't I wouldn't be high around her, but I would do things like, I'd text her mum, can you pick her up early? Because I've got to work on a project, when really I had a hooker coming over at 7 p.m. That's the dark shit. That's where I didn't show up. And guess what? I still have a lot of repairing to do. Like I still have personal lives with her, my kid's mum, my parents. Like there's a few people that still don't want to fucking talk to me, And luckily, I kind of, from a work perspective, didn't do so much damage there. But yeah, it's a road, and the only thing that's going to work is time and showing up. Time is going to heal stuff, and to show people I'm not just a piece of shit anymore.
So I'm not gonna ask you for an advice, if you have an advice for people to avoid this, because realistically, like you described the situation, right? You were in your 20s,
yeah.
Rich as fuck, temptations at all the corners. You're gonna slip.
Yeah,
it happens. It's the same in the tech world. It's the same
yeah.
everywhere where you're successful, right?
Really in tech, yeah. It's littered in tech.
But if you have an advice for somebody to try to contain it or to be aware of their situation, what would that advice or multiple?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Only you can really diagnose if you have it, right? That's the beauty of this. Is you can have your wife telling you, "Hey, I think you're drinking too much," or your boss telling you, like, what's this weird expense to this hooker on the Amex? Like, you can have that, but you've got to come to yourself and be like, all right, something's got to change. The first thing is to accept that maybe you have an issue. And there's a lot of resources there. And now, luckily, with podcasts, you can get people to start listening to sobriety podcasts. See if they relate to what people are talking about. Like when I listen to those things, I try to look for the similarities and not the differences, right? I try to think where I relate to the way someone feels. And if you really think you have a problem, you can call up and find AA meetings to go to. There's 3,000 AA meetings in LA a week. Right. So there's a lot of people that struggle with this. Go to a meeting, sit down, listen, and also, if you're working at like an ad agency or like a creative agency, like your HR department is probably prepping for this to happen to some people. A lot of HR departments will have, if you've got good insurance, you can go to a good place. I would say before throwing your life away, in California, they can't fire you if you went to your head of HR and say, I have a problem with cocaine, I need some help. I would start looking at what resources you have internally. And it's in all the ad agencies. I'm sure there's people that, and creative people are usually the ones that are affected the most, right? I would, if you feel that you have a problem and you work in one of those sorts of companies, I would go to your HR department, let them know, and I would start talking to maybe some friends about it, and seeing it. Try to self-diagnose yourself. It's a really good test. Say you're not going to do it, and if you do it, maybe you got a fucking problem. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm not going to drink tonight. Oh, I got that party coming. I'm not going to do ecstasy. And if you do that shit, I'm not going to do blow on Saturday. And if you end up doing blow on Saturday, maybe you fucking might need to call someone.
That's actually very good advice.
Yeah.
And easy to actually do,
Well, in theory, yeah, in theory it is. But if you're anything like me, I will make a ton of excuses of why it's a good idea to do cocaine on Saturday.
Well, this was an emotional podcast.
I didn't mean for it to be. Sorry.
I mean, listen, this is stuff that everybody needs to talk about because,
Right.
again, it happens everywhere. And like you said, there's a stigma on everywhere. If you have a problem, everybody tries to hide and put problem under the rug, and that bump under the rug just grows and grows and grows.
Exactly.
And I think we actually need to do more of these where people actually go through the good parts of their life, but also the bad parts of their life. And first of all, thank you so much for coming.
Of course, thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for sharing all this stuff. And I'm pretty sure most of the people that will be watching it will start to self-diagnose themselves as well. I know I will.
Thank you so much, Seb.
Thank you for having me, Razvan. It's
I
so
knew
great to
that
see
it
you.
will be an incredible discussion.
Oh,
and
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.